Johnny Carson hosted The Tonight Show for 30 years, making him the undisputed king of late-night television. During his time behind that famous desk, he drew audiences larger than the Super Bowl and became known for his sharp wit, perfect timing, and interviews that felt like conversations between old friends. Most nights, Carson delivered exactly what viewers expected from him. However, there were 6 special guests who could make Carson break character completely. These performers were so talented that they turned Carson from a professional host into a genuine fan, laughing uncontrollably in his chair. Rodney Dangerfield, the master of perfect timing. Rodney Dangerfield showed that Carson had a real weakness for perfectly crafted jokes delivered with flawless timing. While many guests relied on their personality or ability to improvise, Dangerfield was different. He was like a master craftsman who treated each appearance as a precision tool designed to create the biggest comedic impact possible. The most legendary moment happened during a 1983 appearance when Dangerfield launched into his signature routine with devastating effectiveness. He delivered his classic line about getting no respect, telling Carson and the audience that his own mother never breastfed him because she told him she only liked him as a friend. Carson completely lost control, laughing so hard that he couldn't speak. A commercial break was coming up, but Carson was physically unable to deliver the transition. Tears streamed down his face as he gasped for air. What made this moment truly special wasn't just the laughter itself. It was seeing Carson, who was known as the ultimate professional, become completely overwhelmed by pure comedic excellence. The audience could sense they were witnessing something rare, one master comedian being completely conquered by another's skill. Behind the scenes, and Carson would often ask Dangerfield for advice about joke construction and delivery techniques. This mutual respect created a unique relationship where Carson wasn't just acting as a host. He was a student learning from a master. Dangerfield's precision and timing represented everything Carson admired about comedy as a craft. Dean Martin, the art of effortless cool. Dean Martin brought something to The Tonight Show that Carson found endlessly fascinating: the ability to be both prepared and completely spontaneous at the same time. Martin's apparent intoxication created a loose, unpredictable energy that turned ordinary interviews into comedic adventures. Carson, who thrived on controlled chaos, found Martin's relaxed approach both refreshing and professionally inspiring. During a classic 1975 appearance, Martin arrived in his characteristic state of cheerful confusion. He mixed up names, forgot what movie he was promoting, and somehow made every mistake funnier than the last. Carson couldn't stop laughing as Martin called him by the wrong name and seemed genuinely confused about where he was and what was happening. What Carson admired most about Martin was his complete lack of desperation. While other entertainers worked frantically for laughs, Martin achieved them effortlessly through his laid-back charm and perfect timing. Carson once observed that Dean didn't try to be funny. He just was funny. That was a gift that couldn't be taught. Martin's natural ease appealed to Carson, who had spent years perfecting his own seemingly effortless style. Martin's appearances became studies in comedic chemistry. Carson would set up situations, and Martin would respond with lines so perfectly timed they seemed scripted, even though everyone knew they were completely improvised. Once, Martin asked mid-interview if they were doing live television because he thought they were just having a conversation. This honesty was both hilarious and endearing. Behind the scenes, Carson would often visit Martin's dressing room before shows. He didn't go to review material because Martin never had any prepared. Instead, Carson simply wanted to absorb some of Martin's legendary charm. Carson later reflected that Dean taught him that confidence was the best comedy tool. When you're completely comfortable with yourself, the audience becomes comfortable too. Buddy Hackett, the master storyteller. Buddy Hackett possessed something that Carson found irresistible: the ability to turn ordinary experiences into epic comedic adventures through sheer force of personality. Hackett didn't just tell jokes, He painted elaborate pictures with words, creating entire worlds populated by absurd characters and impossible situations. Carson, who appreciated good storytelling, was consistently amazed by Hackett's ability to make even the simplest stories feel like grand theatrical performances. The infamous duck joke became a Tonight Show classic, not just for its content, but for its delivery. Hackett would tell elaborate stories about hunters and farmers, building tension and creating vivid characters that seemed to come alive on stage. His storytelling was so engaging that audiences would hang on every word, never knowing where the story might lead. Carson particularly loved Hackett's unpredictability. Each appearance was a journey into uncharted comedic territory, with Hackett serving as an enthusiastic tour guide through his own twisted imagination. Carson told his writers that you never knew where Buddy was going, but you were always glad you came along for the ride. Hackett's stories often seemed to meander and take unexpected turns, but he always knew exactly where he was heading. His ability to build anticipation and then deliver unexpected punchlines made him a master of the storytelling craft. Carson recognized this talent and gave Hackett the time and space he needed to work his magic. Jonathan Winters, the improvisation genius. When Jonathan Winters stepped onto the Tonight Show stage, Carson knew to expect the unexpected, and that anticipation always paid off spectacularly. Winters possessed a rare gift that Carson treasured above all others: the ability to create fully formed characters and situations from absolutely nothing. No script, no preparation, just pure comedic instinct that could transform a simple prop into 20 minutes of television gold. During a 1981 appearance, Carson handed Winters a broken umbrella as a throwaway prop. Within seconds, Winters had become a demented British colonel trapped in a rainstorm, complete with accent, backstory, and increasingly absurd military anecdotes. He declared with complete conviction that Sergeant Pembroke had been eaten by his own canteen, describing it as terrible business. Carson doubled over with laughter while the audience roared. What Carson loved most was Winters' fearlessness. Other comedians relied on tested material that they knew would work. Winters dove headfirst into uncharted territory every single time. Carson once explained to his writers that Jonathan didn't tell jokes. He inhabited alternate realities and invited everyone along for the ride. This spontaneity created a unique dynamic where Carson became a spectator in his own show, genuinely surprised by each twist in Winters' performance. Behind the scenes, Carson would often extend Winters' segments far beyond their scheduled time, much to his producer's frustration. Carson would whisper during commercial breaks that he didn't care about the show's rundown because pure magic was happening. Winters never disappointed, treating each appearance like a jazz performance where the only rule was that there were no rules. Carson's admiration was both professional and personal. He confided to close friends that Jonathan reminded him why he loved the entertainment beyond usiness. Winters wasn't performing for fame or money. He was performing because he couldn't help himself. Robin Williams, explosive energy and fearless commitment. Robin Williams didn't just appear on The Tonight Show. He exploded onto it like a comedic supernova that left Carson simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. Williams possessed an energy that seemed to defy physics, bouncing between characters, voices, and concepts at a speed that would have destroyed lesser performers. Carson, who was himself a master of controlled chaos, found Williams's barely contained madness absolutely mesmerizing. During a memorable 1982 appearance, Williams arrived in character as the alien Mork, but within minutes had abandoned that persona entirely. He morphed into a Southern preacher, then a Russian ballet dancer, then somehow both simultaneously. He proclaimed that they must leap for the motherland while executing a pirouette that knocked over Carson's coffee mug. Instead of being annoyed, Carson burst into uncontrollable laughter, slapping his desk repeatedly. What distinguished Williams in Carson's eyes was his willingness to commit completely to every ridiculous impulse. While other comedians played it safe, Williams treated each appearance like a high-wire act performed without a net. Carson marveled to his staff that Robin didn't hold anything back. He gave everything he had, even if it meant crashing and burning spectacularly. The technical crew learned to prepare for Williams' visits like stage managers preparing for a hurricane. Extra microphones were positioned around the set because Williams refused to stay seated. Camera operators received advance warning to expect sudden movement. Even the band had to stay alert because Williams might suddenly conduct them while delivering a monologue about penguin mating rituals. Carson's respect for Williams went beyond entertainment value. He told his producers that Robin represented everything that was brave about comedy. Williams would rather fail doing something original than succeed doing something safe. This philosophy resonated deeply with Carson, who understood the courage required to take risks in front of a live audience. Steve Martin. Innovation within tradition. Steve Martin represented everything Carson loved about comedy's evolution. He was simultaneously respectful of tradition and fearlessly innovative. Martin's appearances weren't just entertaining. They were events that redefined what was possible on late-night television. Carson, who had spent decades mastering conventional comedy formats, was thrilled to encounter someone who could shatter those formats while still honoring their spirit. The iconic "I Have to Leave" routine became Tonight Show legend because it perfectly showcased Martin's genius for subverting expectations. Martin had been delivering a perfectly conventional interview when he suddenly announced that he had to leave and simply walked off the set mid-conversation. The audience sat in stunned silence until Martin returned moments later with a completely straight face, as if nothing had happened. Carson was initially confused, then delighted, then genuinely impressed by the boldness of the bit. During the commercial break, he told Martin that the stunt was either completely insane or completely brilliant, and he was going with brilliant. The routine became a recurring element, with viewers tuning in specifically to see when Martin might spontaneously leave again. Martin's influence on The Tonight Show extended beyond his own appearances. His willingness to experiment inspired Carson to take more creative risks in his own performances. Carson later reflected that Steve reminded him that television didn't have to be predictable. Sometimes the best moments came from doing something nobody expected. These 6 comedic legends each found different paths to Carson's heart. Winter's improvisation, Williams' manic energy, Dangerfield's precision, Hackett's storytelling, Martin's coolness, and Steve Martin's innovation all represented different aspects of what Carson considered comedy at its finest. These weren't just successful Tonight Show appearances. They were masterclasses in entertainment that reminded Carson why he loved comedy in the first place. Each of these performers brought something unique to Carson's stage. They challenged him, surprised him, and reminded him that even after decades in the business, comedy could still be fresh and exciting. Their appearances became legendary, not just because they were funny, but because they captured the pure joy of discovery that made The Tonight Show special. These moments remind us that beneath Carson's polished professional exterior was a comedy fan who could still be surprised, delighted, and genuinely moved by exceptional performances. His legacy isn't just what he gave to comedy. It's also what he received from the remarkable performers who shared his stage and reminded him night after night why laughter matters. The magic happened when preparation met spontaneity, when tradition met innovation, and when one master recognized another's genius.